Today, we are going to review Lil Red Riding Hood. It's a classic story that we all know. In any event, what I want us to do today is, as we are going through the story of Lil Red Riding Hood, we're actually going to look further into the characters and the events that take place in the story, and you're actually going to see that the story is actually about mankind and what's about to happen in mankind's history. So first we need to set up the characters. We have Lil Red Riding Hood. And Lil Red Riding Hood is, if you remember in the story, she's this girl and she's going on a journey from her home to her grandmother's house. Okay, so it's an individual that is on a journey. Now, in order for us to classify this character, we have to think of types of individuals that could fit that description. On a journey from one place to another place. So I want us to go to 1 Peter first. Just 1 Peter 2 and verse 11. Beloved, I plead with you as sojourners and pilgrims. That's the point that I'm making with that scripture. He's pleading with them as sojourners and pilgrims, people that are on a journey through this lifetime, okay? Lil Red Riding Hood was someone that was on a journey in the story. So the people that he's talking to, he's talking to the saints in a sense. So we're going to give the saints the role of Lil Red Riding Hood in the story. Now we have the wolf. And we know from the story that the wolf was deceitful in a sense, and that he wanted to eat Lil Red Riding Hood. And so it's not too hard to see where the wolf would come into play here. Now, the wolf, when they first meet, she's going along, and she runs into the wolf, and he asks her where she's going, and she starts conversating with the wolf. And at first, the wolf seems like he's harmless. He's just conversating, with this nice young lady, nothing suspicious going on. And he has this persona of being something that's not an issue. Now, we know from the story that he figures out she's going to grandma's house, and he decides, depending on which version of the story you take, in one version he takes a shortcut to grandma's house, and in that different version he tells her, oh, well, there's some nice flowers over here you can pick for your grandma, and she goes and picks flowers for her grandma, and he continues on to grandma's house. So in any event, we need to go to Daniel 8, verse 25, so we can characterize this wolf. So at first he seems as though he's something that is harmless, when in fact he has ill intentions. So let's go to Daniel 8, verse 25. Through his policy he will cause craft, deceit, and fraud to succeed in his hand, and he'll magnify himself in his heart, and by peace will destroy many. Well, if he's doing it by peace, and if it's deceit and fraud, it doesn't look like the bad guy, at least not at first. Now, we have to look at what the wolf got Lil Red Riding Hood to do. In the version where he is telling her to pick flowers for her grandma, okay? Her mission was to complete her journey from her house to her grandma's house. She runs into this beast, this creature, that tells her to do something else. It's a harmless thing to do, pick some flowers for your grandma. Well, that's great. Well, in the context of this story, the beast, or this wolf, is symbolic of the system that we have today. It's symbolic of the leaders of the world today. It's symbolic of that beastly governmental system. And the picking of the flowers, if you take that version of the story, that's a distraction from what we're supposed to be doing. That's what it is. It's a distraction. It's not something that's necessarily bad. There's nothing wrong with the picking of the flowers, but it's a distraction to slow you down from getting to your destination. That could be something like some shows on TV. It could be something like YouTube or something else on the internet. None of those things have to be bad, but all of those things could be just like picking flowers and slowing you down from your actual mission. Now, I want to mention briefly the version of the story where the wolf takes a shortcut. Okay? Remember, Lil Red Riding Hood is symbolic of the saints in this version, and the wolf is symbolic of those individuals that are bringing forth the beastly system. Notice both of them got to grandma's house. The wolf took a shortcut to grandma's house. Okay? It took a shortcut. That means it skipped something that should have been taken care of. Now what it skipped is in Proverbs 1, verse 7. Okay, so think about this wolf as individuals or a group of individuals that have certain beliefs and a certain agenda here. Proverbs 1 verse 7 says, "The reverence of Yahweh is the beginning, the first requirement and the chief part of knowledge. Only fools despise wisdom and instruction." So, this is what they skipped. This was their shortcut. If you remember in the wedding, okay, the wedding that it talks about, the marriage supper, it says that they found a guy in there that got into the marriage supper, but he didn't have the right garments. And so he was cast out. Well, if you look into Revelations, towards the end, it talks about the kings of the earth, how they're cast out with the beast. It's the same thing. These guys have knowledge to get into grandma's house. They know how to get to grandma's house, but they take shortcuts to get to grandma's house. So, the wolf, when he eventually gets to grandma's house, we know what takes place in the story. In one form or another, he removes grandma from the equation, whether he eats her or throws her out the back window or puts her in the closet, whatever it is. In one form or another, he removes Granny from the equation, gets her out of the way. Now, here's the thing. The wolf removes grandma, and if you remember, he puts on grandma's clothes. So now the wolf appears to be grandma. Let's go to 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians, and we're going to read chapter 11, verses 13 to 15. It says, "For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of the Messiah. And no marvel, for Satan herself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if her ministers also are transformed as the ministers of righteousness, and will be according to their works." So, this wolf is putting on the garments of the granny, but it's not the granny. It's the same thing. The system is eventually going to put on something to where it looks like what we're looking for, but it's not what we're looking for. If you go to Matthew 24, we see the same thing. Matthew 24, verse 23. It says, "Then if any man says to you, 'Behold, here is the Messiah,' or 'He is there,' do not believe it. For there will arise false messiahs and false prophets who will show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they could deceive the very elect. Behold, I have warned you beforehand. So when they say to you, 'Behold, he is in the desert,' do not go out. 'Behold, he is in the holy place,' do not believe it." Why is he giving this warning? This is Yeshua giving this warning. And the very first thing he said when they asked him about this time was, "Be on guard, so that no man deceives you." He's going through all this stress of telling us that there are going to be those that come pretending to be one thing, when in reality, they're another thing. This is Lil Red Riding Hood. The wolf is dressed up as Granny, but it's not really Granny. Now, I want us to go over to Daniel 7, in verse 25. This is how the wolf, in real life, gets rid of the grandmother. In the story, he just throws her in the closet, or maybe he eats her, but this is how it's done in our world. It says, "And he will speak great words against Yahweh, and will wear out the saints of Yahweh, and think to change times." And he didn't just think to do it, he actually did it, okay? "And laws," and we see that right now, a lot of laws are changing in favor of, things that are opposite to Yahweh. "And they will be given into his hand until the time and times and the dividing of time." Well, in Revelations, when it talks about the beast, it tells you that he's given control over all the nations, over all the peoples, and how he gets to change everything how he wants to. This is how you get rid of the grandma. If the grandma in this story is sort of playing the role of Yahweh, or the role of the destination we're trying to get to, this is how you get rid of it. You change what's there. You change laws. You throw it in the closet. Now, if you remember the story, when the wolf puts on the grandma's clothes, he jumps into the grandmother's bed. Now, a bed is a resting place. The grandmother is supposed to, in this context, be a symbol of who we're trying to get to, which would be we're trying to get to Yahweh. Yahweh's resting place is the most holy place. The wolf gets rid of that And the wolf jumps into that resting place. The wolf jumps into the most holy place. Let's go to 2 Thessalonians. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless there comes a falling away first, and that servant of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God's or that is worshipped, so that he, as the Almighty, sits in the temple of Yahweh, showing himself that he is the mighty one. It's the wolf. This is the wolf in Lil Red Riding Hood. It's the exact same thing. It takes a shortcut to get to the grandma's house. It tricks us into wasting time picking flowers, so we take longer to get to grandma's house. It throws grandma in the closet and changes all the laws, and then it puts on grandma's clothes so that it appears to be the righteous thing. That's why Scripture told us that there's going to be such great deceit that if it was possible, the elect would be deceived. That means that whatever comes, whoever comes, almost everyone is going to think, this is Granny. That's what we're going to be thinking. We're going to be thinking, oh, this is so righteous. This is so great. This is the way we should be going in the world. But it's deceit. The Scripture told you. Satan transforms herself into a minister of light. Everyone's sitting here thinking that the devil is going to rip a hole in the earth and come out and be red and have great horns and start spitting fire at people and stabbing them with a pitchfork, and a bunch of ugly demons are going to spill out and start attacking people and carrying them down into the hole. That's not what's going to happen. We expect that because that's what we see in the movies, right? People are sitting there in traffic, oh, come on, move it! Ground opens, demon comes out, and then all the little imps start flying out and grabbing people and carrying them away. That's what we see in Hollywood. But Scripture tells you how it's going to come. It tells you it comes as a minister of light. That means when it comes to you, it looks like the thing that you're looking for. It looks like grandma. But it's not grandma. It's not. So if you remember in the story, okay, Lil Red, when she finally gets to grandma's house, she knocks on the door. Come in. And she walks in, and here is the wolf in grandmother's bed. But it looks like grandma because it's got all of grandma's clothes on. Now, here's the thing. So you remember in the story, there were signs that gave Lil Red clues to this thing not being grandma. Okay? Grandma, what big ears you have. Oh, that to hear you with, my dear. Grandma, what a big nose you have. Oh, that to smell you with, my dear. Grandma, what big eyes you have. Oh, better to see you with, my dear. Grandma, what big teeth you have. Oh, better to eat you with, my dear. And then it pounces. Now here's the thing. Just like in the story, there were clues that this is not grandma. When this thing sets itself up in the most holy place, there will be clues that it's not really grandma. What are those clues going to be? You're going to have to know your scripture. Because there's going to be discrepancies between what this thing says and what Yahweh says. If you remember, on the mountain, when the devil came to Yahshua to tempt him, what did he say every single time? Yahweh said. Now the devil knows what Yahweh says too. Otherwise, it couldn't transform itself into a minister of light. So we have to know our scripture well enough to combat that. Because the devil comes and says, doesn't Yahweh say this? Same thing it said to Eve. Okay, is it true that Yahweh said this? Because he knows what Yahweh says. He knows it. So we have to know without a shadow of a doubt what Yahweh says. Because when these guys come to us, when they come to society, they're going to bring very convincing arguments. And they're going to try to use scripture so they can pull up everyone. So they can try to snatch up the Christians along with everyone else. And if you don't know your scripture enough, you're not going to realize the ears that are too big, and the nose that's too big, and the eyes that are black, and the lawn fangs and the fact that there's fur everywhere. You're not going to realize those things. But if you know your scripture, if you know your grandma, you're going to say, that doesn't look like my grandma. See, you got my grandma's clothes, but it fits wrong. It just, your stomach comes out too far. And the bonnet it doesn't fit properly on your head. I don't think you are my grandma. And the glasses go way too far down your nose. So I think I'll take my leave now, because you just don't really look like my grandma very much. And there's something coming from your posterior end that's very long and fluffy, and my grandma, she doesn't have that. So you can't be my grandma. If you know your scripture, if you know what your grandma looks like, you're not going to be fooled. Now here's the thing. We've come to the point in this society when the majority of Christians haven't read their Bible. They go to church on Sunday, they open it, and they read a psalm, maybe, They're sitting there, all right, everyone open to Psalm 26, verse 2. We have trusted in you, Yahweh. Examine us and prove us now, O Yahweh. Try our minds and hearts. Amen, amen. Let's bring out the chicken. And that's all it is. Now you have churches, like Joel. Maybe, I haven't really listened to T.D. Jakes. Maybe him. That will sit there and they'll inspire you. And they'll bring you scriptures and they'll show you certain things. But the majority of the time, they just go in, open up the book. In the beginning, okay, that's good enough. And then go off to whatever. You would not believe the amount of people that I have met in college, and this is a Christian college, that have no clue what their scripture says. You would not believe the amount of people that were majoring to get a degree in Christian ministry that didn't know what the scripture said. Sitting there trying to have debate with me about scripture, and I'm like, they never said that. They're like, yeah, they did. And I'm like, no, they said this. And they're like, no, they didn't. And I said, give me your book. And they give me their book, and I'm like, right there, see? And they're like, well, that's the wrong book. And I'm like, this is your book. Don't blame me. It's your book. If we don't know the scripture, if we don't know our grandma, then by the time the snatcher wolf pounces, it's too late. It's too late. We have to know our grandma. We have to know our grandmother. Because when we know our grandmother, then it doesn't matter how much deceit the wolf tries to pull. We're going to know that it's something false, and we're going to be able to protect ourselves.